This is the Pro Perspective from House Pro, where home builders, designers, and industry experts share their views on running a modern firm.
If you're an interior design business owner, chances are you've had your share of frustration running a business. Today I'm talking with business coach, creative director, and interior design CEO John McClain about design as a business, the fundamental challenges, what he's learned the hard way, and how he's trying to help designers avoid, as he puts it, the moments when you're crying on the bathroom floor. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Pro Perspective. I'm so excited to have John McClain here with us today. I've known John for a long time, and John is creative director and CEO of John McClain Design, but does so much more, which he is going to share with us. And whenever I talk to John, we talk a lot about, gosh, design as a business. Why does it have to be so hard? Why does it have to be so difficult? Why do all these challenges continue to persist? And why does he run into the same things over and over again when he speaks with other designers about their challenges? So I thought that would be a fun topic for us to jump into today. John, welcome, first of all. So glad.
Thanks.
Why don't we start, given that you do a lot and you're doing a lot and what you do is fairly broad. So maybe just give us a little background on, John today and a little bit about, the evolution of John.
Yeah. So my name is John McClain, and my firm is the John McClain Design. So a very, very difficult name to remember for both. And I have been an interior designer for a little over 15 years now. It's a second career for me, like a lot of people kind of fall into it in whatever method. So my beginning stages of design and the business of design and owning a business in interior design was probably similar to most people's. Then and their experience that they have now, they're working for a friend or they're doing something for family, and then someone sees it and then asks them to do something else, and then before you know it, you're like, wait, I have to charge for this, right? So that's exactly what happened to me, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. My family built homes, and so I was always watching them do that, and it just was like it was inside of me since I was like 7 or 8 years old to eventually become a designer. And once I realized that people would actually pay you for that, with stipulations that you put into place, then everything changed. And I was just so happy to be able to turn a passion, into a business. So I've evolved into coaching now for designers as well, and still take on select projects in my business. But it was interesting, Liza, I started at literally $0, and I was like, oh God, is anyone going to pay me to do this? And then through the years, I built that up to a 7-figure design firm. So the success is, inside of me as far as like how happy it makes me feel. But then you look at the actual sales numbers and it's like, okay, cool. We are doing something right. So it was an evolution for sure.
And you got to the point where you were doing designs for celebrities, right? And doing very high-end luxury design. And maybe just give folks a little bit of background on sort of the type of projects and how that evolution came about.
Yeah, and still am. So I started with one office in Florida and then expanded to Los Angeles. It was definitely an evolution. I was taking on kind of the wrong clients to begin with. I call it anybody with a heartbeat and a checkbook was coming into my door. I was like, yep, come on in. And then I realized, like, what am I doing wrong? Like, why is everyone either a problem child or maybe like 1 out of 10 was good? Like, what was this magic potion? And I realized that there are fewer of those out there, but when you find them, you find so well that you can actually charge more and take on fewer projects. So yeah, it was I was and then I'll tell you this is a funny story. When I was in design school, because again, it's my second career. So my first degree is in business, and I went back to design school because I thought that's what you quote had to do. So I did, and then I ended up getting a job with a firm in Los Angeles and worked here for a while before I started my own. But I was sitting in class on I think it was like a Monday or a Tuesday, and then I left. I got the offer, I left school, and by Friday, I was in an A-list celebrity's living room helping them choose fabric for their drapery, and I'm like, okay, this is quite the change over from Florida to Los Angeles. And now I'm sitting in Beverly Hills, choosing drapery fabric that's like $600 or $700 a yard. Like this is a big change for me. But that's how fast it can change if you open yourself up in the right ways and then find those people who do align with you and want to work with you and want to pay you for what your value is.
So let's kind of circle back to the topic that kind of got us excited about having this conversation today, which is why is running an interior design business profitably so hard and for everyone at every stage?
It is hard, right? It is. And that's something that we all just have to realize and understand that you're not you might be born to be a designer and you might be born with this innate ability to choose the furniture for a space or choose the fabric for a space and see the final result in your head. But you're not always born, and most people aren't, with the business skills or business savvy or even an idea of what to do when it comes to running the business. So opening a design firm, honestly, is it's almost too easy. And I don't mean that like your talent isn't there, because your talent is there. So not everyone can be a designer as far as what their skill set is, but everyone can be a designer as far as getting a business license, opening up, hanging your shingle, creating an Instagram page, like all these little things that make the barrier to entry so simple and almost like so, and in some states, it's like you can do it before you even live there. You can literally open up a business online before you even move to that state. And so I think that most people get so excited, and I did too, about the creative part of it and just seeing the final result and seeing a room, transform. And then they forget, like, oh, actually, I might be a one-person show, but I am a CEO. Like, I'm literally the leader of this business, no matter what the size it is. And then when you do that, there's lots of responsibilities that come into play. And then the other part is, if you are coming into the industry and there are other people in the industry already working well and having systems in place and having processes and ironclad agreements and understanding how to find their very best client, you're competing against them. So when you come in and you don't know how to start a business at all, or even to, take your design skills and turn them into a business, there are many other people who are doing that. And so you're fighting it against them as well. And then the clients that are out there are looking at other people more established or other people who have, kind of their act together in a better way when you don't. So I think that is the part that is hard for other designers coming into the industry to really grasp, is how difficult the business side of it is, because you truly are a CEO no matter what size your company is.
I like that phrasing that you're the CEO. Let's dive into a few of those challenges. So you mentioned, licensing isn't required in the same way it might be for contractors or for doctors, right? But what about something like the cost structure that designers have?
Oh my gosh, there's so much pricing confusion out there. It is every and this and I want to just let the newbie designers know, anyone new, you're not alone. I coach many designers who are in their, 10, 15, even 20 years and still have no idea how to charge, because there's just no information out there. We're not taught this in design school. We're not taught how to price, or even what the fair rate is to price, or how to even come up with that pricing. And we just tend to just pull it out of the air. I remember my first hourly rate was $50 an hour. And this was a project I was in Orlando, Florida, and this was in Tampa, Florida. And so I was driving, with traffic, like an hour, hour and a half every time, and then charging $50 an hour and just like feeling like a king on a mountaintop, right? I was so like luxuriously wealthy with this $50 an hour. And on top of that, I was doing all the things. I was not just designing, because my family again built houses and I knew how to install tile. I knew how to hang wall covering. I knew how to paint, of course. So I was doing a lot of these things, and then also only charging $50 an hour because I thought that that's what designers did. So this was before I investigated further. And then one day my client actually came to me and he was like, I think you can make a lot more money and have a lot more clients if you don't, lay the tile in my powder room. I think you can take on more. And then I was like, there's something to this. So yeah, I decided to sort of, evolve, and DIY is where most people start, right? They start with, again, doing things for themselves or their family, and then they'll post it on Instagram, and then they'll get new clients, but they don't know how to charge for those clients when they come along, and whether it should be an hourly fee or a flat rate or all the other combinations that are out there. So my advice is for people just starting out, charge hourly, but charge an hourly rate that will sustain you and your business. There's a very simple calculator that I give to my students. And it's just simple. You just figure out how much money you want to make, and then you figure out how much money you're going to spend or you are spending with your business every day. And then that will automatically calculate an hourly rate that is fair for you and that you're making profit from. But the very minimum, and I'll just say this and I'll go on record, the very minimum that anyone should be charging for your design hourly rate is $150 an hour. I don't want anybody to charge less than $150 an hour. If you are, you're doing a disservice to yourself. You're doing a disservice to, honestly, our entire industry, because other clients are going to see you charging 50, 75, 85, whatever, and then they're going to go to someone else who's charging more and feel like they're getting ripped off from that. So just please, the minimum you should charge is $150 an hour. I stand on that, and I will support anyone who wants to take that or even charge more than that. But start there, show people what your value is, show people what you're going to deliver. And it's not just like, oh, I'm going to charge 150 and then not know how to provide CAD drawings or not know where to source the right products from what vendors and which ones are quality. You have to do your work, to understand what you're giving that client. But when you do have all the things to substantiate that rate, clients will happily pay that for you. And that's the thing that most people don't realize is when you do have all the skill sets behind you to support you, you can really charge whatever you want.
It's interesting that I think right now it's an interesting time to talk about what you're charging, given sort of the vagaries of the economy in general, and particularly right now. I think, you were at high points, and it sounds like there were a lot of conversations you were having around tariffs. Maybe share a little bit about what you're hearing. I think folks would be interested to know.
Yeah, I mean, everyone is concerned and rightly so. And even, the date that we're recording this, God knows it could change tomorrow. Like literally it's changing every day. But the fears that I heard were, are my clients going to pay for this? How am I going to let my clients know? What am I going to charge? How am I going to raise this rate? What communication method do I provide to clients? And even vendors were scared, like, are we as designers going to want to pay that price? And then are our clients going to want to pay us for that? And if they don't, is that going to lower the business revenue for the vendors? And yes, it will. But the thing is, Liza, is that it's really just being about transparency and honesty. And I beat that into everyone's head because we're so afraid just to say the truth. And there's no reason to hide behind the facts that are in the world. So if the tariffs are there, unless people are living under a rock, they're not going to miss the fact that it's on the news and that, there's controversies around it. But just be honest with your clients and say, hey, we're navigating this together. We are both in the same boat. I don't want to charge you more than what I have to charge, but you want me to make a profit. And because if I don't make a profit, I might not be here to finish your project, or I might not be here a year from now when you have a question about your finished project. So let's all support each other and just be clear about it. And I'm a big proponent of over communication. Like I want to tell a client not all the, dirty laundry necessarily, but the facts of something, the fact that this is happening, the issues that arise from it. Like, yeah, don't withhold that from your clients. And honestly, if it does change every day, if a vendor sends you something today, which is different than what they send you tomorrow, you need to gauge on when and what you're going to let your client know. But don't eat the cost of anything. You're still running a business, and we can be like empathetic with our clients and empathetic with our vendors. But at the end of the day, you're running a business. And when I just find myself being scared about saying the truth, I just remind myself that it is actually a service to my client. Like clarity is kindness. When you are clear to other people, it's a very kind thing to do because they're not having to wonder or guess about what the truth actually is because you're telling them the truth.
I think these types of conversations are so difficult for most people. And you could probably shed some light that they're difficult even later, even for mature businesses. I find that this is always a challenge. I know you've told me some stories, and maybe they're worth sharing here, of how your contracts evolved on this front. And maybe, some of the nightmare stories that you had with clients early on that helped shape your contract, because I think that contract also is a way of setting expectations and being providing the visibility into how you work and what you charge up front. And a lot of, navigating difficult conversations is tied to putting a good foundation in place at the start. So maybe share some of the color in your experience that you had there.
Yeah, they might want to grab a stiff drink before they listen to any of the story. And I won't go, I'll give you the Cliff Note version. So they want the whole sorted tales of it all. You can go to my podcast, The McClain Method, on episode 1, where I just dive into the whole thing because I'm like, let's just tell it all. But the Cliff Note version is I, my first client, I was very excited. My first high ticket client, I should say. I was very, very excited. And the client was essentially just urging me to start the project quickly and get things going. And I'm like, sure, great, great, great. So we were working through the stages, and the client basically said, hey, John, here's my credit card. Feel free, just do whatever you need. Make my 20,000, by the way, square foot home beautiful. And in my head, I'm like, oh, magazines and publicity, and the ego came into play. And so I just jumped into that head first. One day, and we were doing custom furniture, FYI, and every single thing, well, I would say about 80% of the products were bespoke. And we were just going through one day, and I get a phone call, and the client is on the other end of the line, and just honestly, I felt like he was going to pull me through the phone and rip my head off just through the phone. And I was like, hey, 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 calm down, calm down, calm down. It's okay. I don't know what, you're upset about. And essentially the client was accusing me of charging funds to their card that weren't accurate, and trying to rip them off. And I was like, no, I had approval for all of this. But what I didn't have was a written signed contract. I had no written agreement with this client. So I really only had text messages to fall back on, some randomly scattered emails. And long story short, the situation resolved itself in a not so great way, but it did resolve itself because I had to hire an attorney. I had no money at the time to hire an attorney, but I did. It was either that or, in my mind, the worst, case scenario would happen. And I didn't even want to think about that. But when it happened as the quote resolution, it, again, not great for me, great for that client, because the client ended up paying cost for all of these quality products that I had put into to their home, the custom pieces, and I got no fee, no payment for my design fees. That was removed from the table. I didn't even break even because with attorney's fees and time frames and so forth, and money lost by not being able to do other things, I lost money. But in my mind, I was like, let's just get this done. Let's get this over with and move on with my life. But the really key part of this is after it was over, and there were tears shed. Literally, I was pulling out of the client's driveway, and just I was one little tear and two little tears. And then before I knew it, I was couldn't even see the road. So I pulled over to the side of the road, and I was like, okay, you got two choices, John. You can either quit, move on to something else, go back to working for someone else, do something totally different. Maybe this industry isn't for you, or you can figure out what you did wrong and auto correct that on your own, self correct that. And that's what I did. And I just was like, dried my tears, literally, took off, and I had about a 2 hour commute, and I drove back to my house, and I was like listing things in my head that I had done wrong, not just by not having an agreement at all, but also I had no process. I had no steps to follow. I had no concern or idea of whether things were getting done or not getting done, because I was just flying by the seat of my pants. And I call it like bumper carring, right? I was just bumping into everything that was going on with my business, quote, not really a business, but whatever you want to call it at that time. And I was just enamored by the possibilities of what the project could be. So when I did that and the finger pointed back to me, I was like, okay, you fix this and you start fixing it now. And I did. And now I have a 26-page, unapologetically 26-page design agreement. And that agreement is my foundation. I can stand on that. I can correct clients when they misunderstand something. And it's so clear, and I wanted my attorney to help me write it so clearly that a 5-year-old could understand what was on there. And that's where we are with it. And now that agreement it has been the savior for me so many times, and it really allows me to lay my head on my pillow at night and know that I won't have to wake up to an irate client or someone who doesn't, who's pointing their finger at me for things that they feel that I did wrong. So yeah, the agreement is truly, truly the foundation of a firm. And it's so sad. I was talking to someone the other day. They've been in business for 15 years as well. And she said she's never worked with an agreement and she's never had a problem. And I said, until you do have a problem, that's when you're going to need that agreement. So please, just I urge everybody. I don't care if it's a simple little template that you purchase from whomever, just or from, I sell my agreement, whatever, just like please get something to establish the rules of operation for your business.
I think it's great advice, but I like that story because I think everyone has had mistakes, right? Made mistakes, and you feel terrible, and you feel like it's just me, and right, can I do this? And so I appreciate you sharing that because I think it really helps folks see that yes, there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and there are ways to put processes in place and things in place to get to a better place. And maybe that's a good segue for us diving into why you decided to become a business coach. So there are so many issues, right? Oh, no licensing, cost structure, there's no training available, right? You're the CEO of your business, so you are everything. You went into it because you like creative, but now it's people management and client management and financial management and all of these things that didn't necessarily train for. So, I guess what motivated you to do this?
Well, I actually fell into coaching sort of like I fell into design. It was word of mouth or someone asking me how I did something. They would see, maybe a project that was published, or they would hear me discuss at a dinner party or a cocktail party about some part of my contract, or they would hear me talk about maybe what I was charging at the time or this system that I had in place. And then they would just start asking me like, hey, well, how did you do that? And what is that? And I'm like, oh, it's very simple. And then of course it was not, but in my head, I had spent, at that point, like ten years or so getting it ironed out. And yeah, I just started sharing bits and pieces of my processes with people and different parts of my agreement. And I realized that a lot of designers, they kind of struggle in silence because they are in this silo. They're just by themselves. They don't have a big operation. They don't have a big team. They don't have any team sometimes. And they're just sitting in this spare bedroom of their house and just wallowing in their grief because they don't know what to do. So I just wanted to create something where people could actually have a place to rely on and have someone to trust, to ask questions to. And I say that I've probably experienced everything that can go wrong or can go right in a design business. And that's I really feel like it's true. There are some things that pop up. I'm like, oh, that's out of left field from a coaching student. But yeah, I just share and just like I shared that story, I share my struggles with people and let them know that, as you said, Liza, we're all in the same boat and everyone doesn't know how to solve a problem or the answer to a problem. And I want to be there for a sounding board for them. And I kind of wanted to be a coach that I wish I had had earlier. I wanted to have things available to people that I wish I could have been, plugged and played into my business. And I've done the work. I've done it all. I've tried and the trials and tribulations of everything I've gone through. So I share my processes. I share what worked, what didn't, what doesn't work. I give advice and mentorship based upon my business. And I think the thing that most designers like, and I don't want to put words in their mouth, but this is what some of them say to me, is that you are a designer, you are a working designer, you've built your business from that horrible contractual situation to, multi seven figures and then in two states. And they look at that and they want to achieve that. And I want to help them achieve that. And I don't want them to have these issues. And if I can give somebody one thing, one piece of advice, one template, one, takeaway from what I've learned, and it saves them from going through those, crying on the bathroom floor moments that I had, then it was worth every bit of that. And that's as cheesy. I know it sounds so cheesy to say that, but it's really not. It's a heartfelt thing that I do, and I truly, truly, truly enjoy it. And I love when a student comes back to me and says, I don't know where I would have been without your course, or because I offer courses as well as one-on-one coaching. And some people just want to take the course and learn on their own. Other people need a bit more of a hand-holding situation, which I am happy to do. But it's just nice to see the fruits of their hard work coming into play and them realizing like, yes, I'm a great creative, but I might not be a great business owner or a business leader, and to help them to get to where they want to go. And then it changes as they move throughout their business too. Their issues as a newbie aren't the same as their issues as someone who's been in business for 5 years.
So along those lines, what do you get asked for help with most often? So what are people coming to you, with about that they, most often, and how does that differ for emerging versus established firms?
Yeah, the thing when new designers come to me, or someone who's been in business for, let's say, 2 years or less, or they're thinking about opening up a design business, they really just want to know, what should I charge and how do I find clients? That's their number one goal. And I'm like, okay, yes, great questions. However, do you know who you are? Do you know what you stand for? Do you know what values you have that you want these clients to have? So you shouldn't be taking on anyone with a heartbeat and a checkbook. You should be taking on people who align with your values. So I sort of just like rewind them a bit when they're just starting out, or emerging, as I call them, and just let them know that what they value, what they hold dear, it matters, and you should not diminish that. And you should only work with the clients who have those characteristics. So there's some mind work involved in it. And I start with saying, what is your why? Why did you want to be a designer? Why did you want to open it up as a business? You could have worked for someone else. You could have done something, totally different. Why did you want to be an interior designer, and really get into the nitty gritty of that? And I have them write it down. It is documented, and I just remind them to remember that why on those days when it's hard. Remember that why on those days when a client is upset, or when something is delayed, or there's a problem on the project. Remember that why, and that why will get you through those dark times. So yeah, so I help them with that. But then we move on to the pricing, and I remind them of their value. They don't always see that, and I didn't either when I first started. I didn't realize I'm changing lives. Like, we are, as designers, changing people's lives. You might be choosing a sofa and you might be choosing a coffee table, but you are changing lives. And that is what honestly, that's invaluable. There is no price point you could put on that, but you need to find a price point to make profit in your business. So we work on that. We get the hourly rate situated, and then I help them with their processes after I make sure that they have a great agreement and their pricing is in place. We start to work, and they know who their client is. We start to work on processes, and to make sure that when you do bring someone in, you're not just saying, hey, I'm going to, as I called it, bumper carring around, and just bump into this vendor, and I'm going to bump into this order here that I didn't remember to place, or this was late. You're going to have a system in place to say, when you call me client, here's where we are, step one. And then I have an 18-step process that I follow. And then when we get to step 18, you're done. Your project is finished. You're in love with it. I'm in love with it. That's really all a client wants to know. But they do value the fact that a designer does have a system and a process in place, and they like that. Now, other designers who have been in business longer have other issues, right? So at that point, we're wanting to either add more team members, or maybe we have team members, but the management of them isn't going well, or we're wanting to elevate our business to a different level, and really take on only luxury, quote unquote, projects. And that's a term that's overused in our business, but people really need to know, what does a luxury project look like to you? And then how do you get there? So the growing pains of someone who's been in business a bit longer are a bit different. But I talk to some of those people too, and I say, how is business? It's great. I've got 42 projects, and I'm like, oh my God, you should not have 42 projects. First of all, you should have maybe a third of that, and they should all be great, amazing projects that should be making you as much or more money than you're making off of those 42 projects. So it's almost a reverse, analysis of it, where like you have so much work because you said yes to things, and you feel like you need it to keep that team being paid and to keep the lights on in your business. But you're not asking, again, is it the right client? And to me, it goes down to branding. It goes down to, do you relay this message to your team? Are you educating people on who you want to work with? What messaging are you putting out there? And how is that affecting your profitability and the type of clients that you get?
So I want to just push a little bit on that. Your mention of luxury clients as an overused term. Maybe talk a little bit about that. Why do you think that is? And what do you think people mean when they say they want more luxury clients, and how do you advise them?
It is it's a term that I think is a valid term because it gives someone something to aspire to. We all should have something that we want to aspire to. But if you don't know if your definition of luxury is a $10 million home, or is it a client who just loves, loves, loves everything that you do and you run through the project smoothly and everything works out great, or is it a project that you get published in a magazine? Like, what is your definition of luxury? So for me, it has lots of components in there. It's not always the biggest house. We had a client once who literally we just renovated their primary bedroom suite with their bathroom, and they spent half the value of their house on that primary renovation of their bedroom and bathroom. And I asked them, I said, this is your home is worth this, and this is what we're spending. And they're like, yes, this is our forever home, and we want it to be great. So it really does depend upon what the client is looking for, and does that client's project align with what you're looking for. So we were able to do in that project, for instance, it turned out beautifully. It was published in magazines, and it was just two rooms, and they weren't even huge rooms. But we did so much in those rooms that was custom, and so much that was elevated, and so much that was my definition of luxury, which was great products and, learning things about design that trying products that I had never even worked with before, or, really taking risks on certain things. So when you sit down and ask yourself, what does luxury mean to me? I want you to really think about that. And it's not always the price of the home. It has a lot of things to do with what are you going to do with that home when it's finished? Are you going to be able to market it? Is it representative of your design aesthetic, or are you just doing it for the money? And is that client still aligned with you? Do they like that you have processes? Do they enjoy, do you enjoy working with them? Do they enjoy working with you? All these things are just sort of that happy moment for me where I decided to say, okay, this is my definition of it. I'm not following some other designer that's on television's definition of what they feel is luxury. I'm following what I feel. And then when I did that, I raised my rates. I moved into flat fees. I was able to charge more and really deliver to that client. So that to me are the keys for really understanding what luxury means to you. Is just sit down and ask yourself the real facts about it. What are you looking for, not what is your neighbor designer friend looking for?
I think it's interesting that firms, emerging and established, they have specific things that they think they need help with, right? They come to you with, hey, I have this specific thing in mind, or it's pricing, or, I'm worried about lulls in my pipeline, et cetera. But where do you think a business coach can help the most? So, because you kind of come from another perspective, and when you get in there, you're like, okay, you're coming to me for X, but actually, what I really think you need is why. So what are some of those things that you see that, a business coach can really help with?
Well, I think that it's always nice to have someone coaching you or helping you who is on the front lines, who has experienced those things, and they're not just basing things on theory. And that's what I have. So anything that I coach anyone on, anything that I'm still a practicing designer. I'm very selective on the projects that we take on, but we have two projects right now, and those are great projects that I really love, and I love what they're going to look like when they're finished, and I love the clients that we're working with. So for me, it is about, working with someone who has an understanding, a true understanding of what that business owner is going through as a designer. But I also say you can't read the label from inside the jar. And a lot of times we're in this little silo of our lives and in our businesses, and we're trying to go the day to day, and we're going from project site visit to the fabric store to, pick up something from the warehouse. And we just go through the motions and we feel really busy. But when you stop to think about the time that you're putting into that, you're not making money. Even though you might have money in the bank account, you're not making money when you compare it to the time that you're spending on those things, and you're not giving yourself enough credit for what you're doing, and you're not stopping to say, is it worth my time to do this? Like, I had a team member tell me not long ago, she was like, yeah, I had to go and pick up the toilet from the warehouse because the plumber needed it. And I was like, no, your best use of time is not picking up a toilet and putting it in your car and taking it to the job site. There are other people to do that. We could have hired a courier. We could have, strong armed the GC to do it. There are so many other ways. So just don't keep saying yes to things, I think. And as a coach, I like to just help people to, see things differently, to see things that they didn't see, those blind spots in their business, or are you making money from that? Or when they're newer, are you charging enough? Do you have a system in place? And for the people who've been in business a lot longer, they're typically wanting to elevate themselves to, getting published in magazines or getting more press and really stop being in the weeds of their business. And so I did those very things, and I asked myself, okay, if you're going to grow your business from one office to two offices, one was very busy, and you're really going to take on another, load of clients, how are you going to do that? How are you going to make sure that your business, keeps running the way that it is now, and successfully? And I did that through processes, and I did that by hiring team members that I could trust, and then I trained them to, for lack of better words, be me. They were a little, version of me that I had trained and mentored and asked them to, this is how I would react in this situation. Here's how I want you to react. And when you do that, you can literally have, these little mini me's of yourself running your business. And I'm not diminishing them in their skill set. I'm just saying it's copycats of you. It's copies of you, because your business is successful at this point for a reason. It's because of you and what you've provided. So teach other people to do that, and then delegate to them. I call it diligent delegating. You just delegate to them, but you're very explicit on what you want the outcome to be and what they need to do to get there. And you've already trained them on that. But, a sample that I use is like, you can't just say, find me a sofa. You can say, please source a sofa that has this height, this color, this fabric, this seat, this, back, this arm, all the things. And then you can walk away from that delegation and move on to something else that will allow you to grow your business. One thing that a lot of designers don't let themselves do is dream. And I'm a big fan of taking the time, whether it's in the shower, whether it's on a car ride, just let yourself dream of where you want your business to be, and look at it from that 30,000-foot view and ask yourself, where do I want my business to be in 2 years and 5 years and 10 years? And how much do I want to be involved in that or not involved in that? And when you allow yourself time to dream, you will start to put goals in place to achieve that dream. And some of those goals, they're different when you're new and when you're established business. But when you start putting goals in place to achieve that, there really is no limit of where you can go and what you can achieve.
I love that. I think setting goals is super important. And we had a podcast with a very successful construction firm. And what I loved most is it was exactly that. They said, well, let's set audacious goals, things that we think we can't reach. And then lo and behold, they actually got them because they had something to shoot for. And then they, continued to get more ambitious. And so I think it's good to have those in place, because you never know what you can do, even if you try. And it's good to set goals that that you think are ambitious and that you might not be able to hit, or are going to require, a lot of work to do. And I think probably working with a business coach can help kind of give you the confidence to set those goals as well, and kind of go through the process of talking about what that would mean and how it would change your own life, right? And how what does fulfilling look like? I think those are other good conversations, I think, as a business owner to think about, which is, and we've had this conversation with some other folks, that not everyone's goals are the same, and you have to decide what makes you happy and what are so for some it's, I don't need a huge firm, but I want to work on these particular type of projects, right? For others it's, I want a firm and a team, and you kind of have to own your own right? Be okay with saying, okay, what I want may not be the same thing as what somebody else wants, and I really need to get clear myself of what being fulfilled and what success looks like.
I love that, Liza. That's so good, and it's so true. And your success, like you said, is not someone else. You're not Shay McGee. Shay McGee's success is Shay McGee's success. Your success is your firm's success. And I sat down and said, what is my definition of success? And it surprised me. It surprised me when I asked that question to myself, like what do I want to be? What do I need to achieve to be successful? It was slow start to my day, coffee with my dog on the sofa, watching the news. It was, not working on Fridays. It was things that weren't monetarily achievable necessarily. There was no monetary thing attached to them. It was more of a feeling for what I wanted that to be. And it was peace of mind. And, knowing that I had a contract in place that would support me, and knowing I had a team that knew my processes, and knowing that we don't, for instance, we don't share our cell phones with clients, so there's no texting. So knowing that I have these guardrails in place to give me peace of mind, I realized that the peace of mind for me and that sort of like relaxation in my own self and having that time to myself when I wanted it was more valuable than some of the other things that I was labeling as quote unquote success.
So interesting. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's that work-life balance, it's that sense of consistency, right? Like you obviously want interesting work, but you also don't want every day to be so crazy different, or every project to run in a crazy different way. That's why we talked about the systems and processes and having those workflows in place that make sense, right? Those are the things that give you the guardrails. I'm curious, how do you manage to not give clients your cell numbers?
Oh, we just say we're not giving you our cell phones.
They just email you? Is that how they contact you?
Yes, we no, well, yes, they do email us, but we have all of our interactions in House Pro, to be honest with you. So every single communication that we have, we do a what I call a how we work document, and then this little, I think it's 3 pages at this point, but it discusses, and then we give this to them before we even work with them. So it says our office hours, how invoicing is done, how we communicate, and how we approve things. So we literally tell them, you're going to start by putting things in your house idea books, and then that's how we're going to get the juices flowing between us and what you want for your design. And then after that, we move into how we're going to communicate. So they can call the office, obviously, of course. We have our someone there to answer the phone, but the way that I prefer communication is written communication, and I would say about 80% of it is inside of House Pro, to be honest with you. So they'll click the bubble and ask a question about the product, or we'll have the schedule that they can ask questions about. So I just like to have everything kind of in one place so that we're not scrambling trying to figure out who said what. And then things get misconstrued in a text message. Like, I don't want a message from my mom popping up before a message from a client and then me saying something that to the client that I would have said to my mom. Like, that's just weird, right? So I just tell them that this is how we communicate. It keeps your project running smoother. It will make sure that your project is on time, nothing is lost. And again, when you go back to the deliverables and when you tell them the benefits for them that they're getting from this, they're 9 times out of 10 on board with that. And then there are times, though, I will say, when we were late for a meeting or when we're stuck in traffic and we have to message the client or call the client, I should say, from our phone, then they have our cell phones. But then if they start to send things to us in that cell phone text message or whatever, I just redirect them back to the way that we communicate and the reasons why we do that.
I love it. Another way I think you're setting boundaries, but also creating that source of truth. And just so folks know, in House Pro, you can enable SMS for the client, text messaging, so they can text you,
Yes.
but it goes in and captures the same source of truth. And so all of those written communications are in that central place that they can go and see what they wrote to you, what you wrote back, etc.
It's so
And
funny
their
you mentioned
text.
that. We haven't started doing that yet, but I'm on the verge of allowing that to happen, because if that happens, then they feel like they're communicating with you in that way. But I still want to let them know that you're not going to get a response, until the following business day.
Yes. So I think setting those that exactly, like, hey, this is when you'll hear back from us, is still a good fundamental thing to set up front. And I see people putting it in their contracts these days, etc., so that folks know 100%. Hearing the sort of balance and shooting for, different types of success. I think one of the things owners often struggle with in terms of transition is letting go of that day to day. So,
Mhm.
you talked a little bit about, this diligent delegation. How else do you coach folks as they're making that transition to a larger firm, or have team members to let go of the day to day while still sort of feeling like they're running things?
I always just suggest that you stop and make a list of, here's what I like to do, and here's what I don't like to do. And then there's that gray area in the middle. It's like, okay, I can do this, but I'm not like in love with it, or I'm not like the best at it. And then figure out how to get those off your plate. So keep the things that you love doing, keep the things that are, propelling your business forward, keep the things that are driving you as a designer and as a business owner, keep those things. But start to delegate the other things to other people. And now with the, advent of AI and all the different things, you can literally have an assistant that is, a virtual assistant or a virtual designer, someone, offsite, or you can have AI help you do a lot of the things that we had all used to spend hours and hours doing, if you do it in the right way. I'm not saying turn over everything to AI and turn into that. No, 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 no. It should be your assistant only. But my point is, get those things off of your plate, and then you can focus on the things that you're like amazing at. You can focus on, front end client work. You can be the person who handles the discovery calls. You can be the person who is, maybe you're really good at closing the sale, so you want to do the consultations, but you have someone else who can follow up and then send all the extra paperwork that goes along after that. So find the things that you're really, really good at, that superpower that you're like, yes, I am amazing at this. This is what I like to do. I'm going to keep doing this, and then remove the other things that are not. And even if you are really good at it, you still might ask yourself, can my skill set be better put to use doing something else? So if you are really good at something, like I can, for instance, as an example, I could make changes to my website. I can do little things on my website if I needed to, but it's not my forte. Like, why would I want to spend my time doing that when I'm not doing something to move my business forward? I'm not attending a cocktail party, or a realtor association event, or a trade show that would allow my business to move forward. Those are the things that only a CEO can do and should be doing. And those are the things that are like really business forward, facing the things that a CEO would face, going into meetings that only you could do, and not forgetting all the things that goes on behind the scenes, like the revenue strategies and, all the other stuff that is important for your business. But yeah, when you train the right people to do these things for you, or you even have a piece of technology in place, such as House Pro, or, any other thing that you have, a calendar booking system, when you take that off of your plate, that's one less thing you have to worry about that day. And then you can take that 10 minutes, 15 minutes, sometimes an hour, and then put that to something that moves the needle in your business that a CEO would be handling.
I think that's the best way to think about it, which is,
Yeah.
what do I not enjoy doing? And
Yeah.
definitely offload that to a team member as you had it. Well, I feel like, I would be remiss if we don't touch on branding, because I feel like that's an area that you have so much expertise in, but maybe we focus it a little bit. One of the things we talked about was, one of the places you think a business coach can help with scaling a business. And we're sort of talking about, okay, letting go of the day to day, but getting the brand under control. And I hearing you say, like, what does it mean to get the brand under control? Because most people are thinking, how do you get me everywhere? I want to be everywhere. So when you said, you need to get your brand under control, a little light bulb went on. I want folks to hear that from you.
Well, for me, branding is a lot of things, like almost too much to mention in an interview. But the basis of branding is, again, you have to know what your business stands for. You have to know who you are as a business owner. You have to know who you want that client to be. And then you're always speaking to that client. You're always speaking to that very best client, because what is the goal of a business? To make profit. How do we do that? We find more clients. And how do we find those clients? We speak to them in ways that they will relate to, and we hit those pain points that are bothering them in their lives. So when you sit down and figure those things out, and then know how to speak to that client, that very best client, know how, your messaging is going to be, you start doing that everywhere. You literally do it everywhere you go. I call it autopilot selling, because you are literally on autopilot. And it doesn't even mean that you're selling something to someone all the time and that you're trying to push something. You're just being yourself. You're just saying the thing that you know. And then what that relates to in the real world is that your Instagram messaging, it just flows out. You just say it the way that you want to say it, and that message is hitting the target of that ideal client. Or you're at another business function or a cocktail party, and someone asks you about your business. You know exactly what to say. You have that elevator pitch down so well, and it's not even a pitch, because it's literally who you are, but it comes out so easily that everywhere you go, everything you do, whether it's written or verbal, in front of people, behind your computer, it is your messaging, and it is hitting something in that client's head that's like, oh wow, that's exactly, yeah, I don't want to, I want to be able to say, here's the project. I want to see the finished result in 6 months. I want that. Okay, if that's your ideal client, if that's their pain point, speak to that all the time, and speak to that of how you're going to accomplish that. You can then start charging more, and then you can start finding more of those people. And that's the simplistic way of doing it. But I will say this, Liza, branding, it starts long before you start, getting in magazines and getting on television shows and getting those clients rolling in. It starts many, many years before that. And a lot of people just want to flip that branding switch and instantly, be this successful brand. And it just does not happen that way. You need to have, down to the nitty-gritty things. You should know what fonts you use in your newsletters, on your website, what language you don't want to say, what language you do want to say, what are the brand colors that anyone can put together something for your clients, a newsletter, or again, your website, your blog, all these things. What are those things that people look at and say, yep, that is instantly, XYZ design company, and they know you because of all those things. So you have to know what you stand for, know who you want to reach out to, and then know all the components that allow you to speak to that person. To me, that's your brand. And it may evolve over time. You may decide to tweak it a little bit and reevaluate some things because maybe your clients have changed and that target has changed. But if you just make sure that you, your team, and everyone who speaks about your company has that brand image in their mind, then you never have to worry if you're putting the right message out.
I love that. And it sounds like, you're sort of speaking to sort of clarity and then consistency of delivery. And I'm guessing what you often see out there is just inconsistency and consistency of how companies present themselves.
Oh my God. Literally. I'm like, okay, you want let's say someone told me they wanted again, let's say a $10 million home. That's their definition of luxury. And I go onto their IG or I go onto their website, and their IG is them like, doing some kind of DIY thing on their own home, or their social media is a mess, and their stories, there's like all over the place. And then their website, if they even have one, is very disheveled. There's no image of who they are. There's no mention of who they're even speaking to. That is a mess. And that is you trying to say in your head, I want this luxury client. I want this luxury level. I want my brand to be this, but you're putting something totally different out into the world. And I know people are saying, well, John, if I'm brand new, I don't have projects to show, I don't have anything to show people. You know what you have? If you know who you are wanting to reach, you can go and let's say you talk about a hotel that you love going to and visiting because it has this image of the brand and the design style that you like, or maybe they treat people a certain way. Talk about that, right? There's so, and or maybe do a fake project, literally a fake project that and render it and bring it to life and then show people what you can do. So there are so many ways to practice what you preach before you even have somebody who's paying you to do that. And it just goes back to start now. Start now with your brand, know what that brand is, and start speaking to that brand today. Even if you're day one in business, start speaking about your brand today. And by the time you get to 5-10 years in business, you're going to be smooth sailing with your branding.
Love it. Love it. Well, John, this has been incredibly enlightening. And I know that, we talk a lot about how the business of design doesn't have to be so difficult. There are resources out there. I encourage people to listen to your podcast to get to know you and to, consider using a coach if they find that they feel alone and feel like they need somebody to talk to. I think all of us, and, even me, it can be lonely when you're running a business, and sometimes you need a safe place to be able to talk about things that are going on, and that person can help you not just with your business, but just I think psychologically it's helpful to feel like you have somebody in your corner. So thank you so much. And I'm, again, we're all so pleased that you're working to help the industry overall be aware of these things and hopefully not cry on the bathroom floor. Everyone's had that moment, and it's the pits. So
it is.
So thank you so much. It's so fun to talk to you as always. And I hope we'll see you soon.
Yeah, my pleasure. Keep on keeping on out there, everybody. And if they want to know more, they can head to themcclainmethod.com, and I have lots of free resources for people there as well.
Super. Thank you, John.
Thanks, Liza.
This series is brought to you by House Pro. To learn more about our best-in-class software for winning clients, managing projects, and simplifying your workflow, visit house.com/pro.